That's a fun twist.
It was a fun thing to do.
Why did you focus on writing children's literature?
Hmm. Um, you know, it might have something to do with the fact that I also like to draw pictures. And um, it's much more, except for graphic novels, it's much more common for kids' books to be full of illustrations than grown-ups. And I also just really like the idea of telling the story both with words and with pictures, which is more a feature of kids' books than adult books.
I've definitely seen more kid books with a lot of pictures than adult books.
Right.
Let's go, young authors, hey, let's go out and slay the day. Write your story your own way. What's up, young authors, hey?
That's our theme song for What's Up, Young Authors. What's up, young authors? I'm Amelie Anastasia, author of Foxtails and Foxtails 2, and your host of What's Up, Young Authors. What's up, young authors? Today I'm here with a special mentor guest, Lynne Rae Perkins. Welcome to the show, Lynne.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. It's an honor to have you here. So, when did you write your first book?
I wrote my first book about 30 years ago. And but I was already in my 30s. I had planned to be an artist before that, and I accidentally became a writer as well.
What inspired you to start writing?
Well, I had studied art in college, and I was trying to get work as an illustrator of children's books. I had a portfolio review with an art director, and she asked me if I also wrote stories. I had a little story in my head that I had made up just so I could have something to draw pictures of, but I hadn't written it down. And so I told her, well, I have some ideas. And she gave me her business card and she said, send us your ideas. And that felt like such an encouragement. I thought that she had seen something in me that nobody else had seen. And I found out later that that was a question she asks everybody whose portfolio she looks at. So anyway, I went home and I typed up my little story and I sent it to that publisher, and they wanted to publish it and they wanted me to illustrate it. So that was my very first book, and it was published in, I think, 1995.
Cool.
Hmm.
So, you were planning on being an artist, but you accidentally became an author and an artist.
Yeah, after I did that first book, I thought, wow, maybe this is something I could do.
And what was your first book called?
It was called Home Lovely. It was about a little girl who moves with her mom into a mobile home in the middle of nowhere, and she plants a garden. It was a picture book, and she finds some little plants growing around the garbage can. Have you ever does your family compost at all?
Yeah.
Do you ever have little volunteers, little plants that start to grow in your compost pile just because there are seeds in there?
Do we? Do we have like little plants that grow in our compost pile?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what happened. Some seeds had fallen outside their garbage can, and she thought they might be flowers or trees, so she planted them alongside the driveway. And then the mail carrier told her that they were actually, as they got bigger, the mail carrier told her that they were actually tomatoes and potatoes and melons. So that's what she ended up growing.
Why did you choose to focus on writing children's literature?
Well, I think partly because of how I got started, because I was planning to illustrate children's literature, and then I wrote that first story. But also because I really like telling stories both with writing and with pictures. I think that's a really interesting thing to do. Often the pictures tell a part of the story that the writing does not tell.
So, I have a bit of an odd question for you.
All right.
Um, so in the back of your Nuts to You book, it's about squirrels. There's a picture of you sitting on a bench and there's a squirrel eating something next to you.
Yes.
Is that your little friend there? Did you make friends with it or?
It's actually a stuffed squirrel.
Oh, it looks so real.
I know, I know.
Yeah.
My daughter took a bunch of pictures like that. It was fun to do. Yeah, as you remember, the story starts with this storyteller sitting on a bench with a sandwich and the squirrel jumping on the park bench next to her.
That gives me a really funny feeling. This is about a squirrel who cried wolf in the beginning, and seeing you sitting by that squirrel that looks so real.
Hmm.
It's like the stuffy who cried squirrel.
That's a funny idea.
Yeah. What made you choose animals as your main characters in Nuts to You?
So that I can tell you how that book got started, and then I have something else to say about that. But I was working on illustrations for a picture book about Johnny Appleseed, and out of nowhere, the phrase "the squirrel who cried wolf" popped into my head, and it just I thought it was really funny. I don't know why, and I wrote it down. And much later, I came across it, and I thought it was funny again. So I started making up some little squirrel stories. Um, and I was thinking about real squirrels. I was thinking about all the things that can happen to squirrels, and I was thinking about I was looking up things about squirrels' lives so I could sort of be kind of accurate. But I think in a lot of stories about animals, including mine, they're not they're not exactly animals, because when they start telling each other jokes and having philosophical thoughts, they're sort of stand-ins for us. They're sort of, having relationships like we have. So they're sort of squirrels and they're sort of people.
That's funny. You illustrate your own books. That's amazing, and the artwork is so beautiful. How do you
Thank you.
how did you learn to illustrate that well?
Well, I've practiced for a long time. Um, and I think I've gotten a little bit better at it, so I feel good about that. Yeah, I think it's mostly just, well, I did study art in college, so I took a lot of classes in drawing, and but I think that I think it's funny when people say to me something like, "Oh, I can't even draw a circle. I can't even draw a straight line, and you're so talented," or something. But the truth is that it's a skill that you can learn and practice.
That's cool. How did you choose how you wanted to illustrate them? Like painting versus marker versus crayon?
Hmm. Well, I've done most of the art that I've done, most of the illustrations that I've done have been either pen and ink or watercolor or pen and ink and watercolor. And so I knew these were going to be black and white illustrations. And so there is pen and ink, but all the gray washy parts are actually watercolor. And I know that when I first started, I was trying to figure out how I was going to draw the squirrels. And at first I was trying to draw super realistic squirrels, but then it got more fun when once I got used, like there's a little thing in the back of the book that tells you how to draw a squirrel's body, right?
Yeah, it's right here.
And so once I got the hang of doing that, I could be looser about it. And it got to be really fun. It's really fun to try to draw an animal in a position that animal would not normally be in. Like there's a picture of of Chika when she is lying back on a branch, kind of lounging and pretending that she has been there for a long time when she's racing. And it's a position that a squirrel would never actually be in, but it's fun to try to make it look like they could be in that position.
Yeah. What do you enjoy more, writing or illustrating?
Okay, what do I enjoy more, writing or illustrating? I really like doing both things, and the truth is that often when I'm writing gives me ideas for drawings. And often when I'm drawing, words pop into my head. So for me, they kind of go back and forth. And whichever one I'm not doing seems like it would be easier to do. Like if I'm writing, I think, gee, it would be easier to do a drawing than to write this, and the other way around.
So it's like both things inspire each other.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And sometimes, sometimes if I'm having trouble with one part, like if I'm having trouble figuring out how to say something with words, then it's a good idea to try to draw for a while. And I've heard people say that about other things. Like I have a friend who is an artist and a musician, and he said when he's having trouble with his drawings, he goes and plays his bass, and when he's having trouble making music, he goes and draws. It's nice to have two things you can go back and forth between.
Yeah. So, what comes first in your process of creating a book? Illustrating or writing?
Um, as I said, I kind of go back and forth. And what I usually start with are little ideas, little pieces of ideas. And I try to figure out how to say them, what would be the best way to say them. And usually that's partly with words and partly with pictures. So I start right from the beginning. They're sort of both there. Um, I think I might have written maybe one picture book where I wrote all the words before I did the pictures, but I don't usually do that.
How did you go about getting your books published? Like, I know that they wanted to publish your book, but how did you get it there?
Oh, well, so they already had the manuscript, the words part, and I didn't, because I was so new at it, I didn't really know how to get it there because they're in New York City. And I asked my editor, how should I get this art to you? And she said, well, you can ship it to us, or if you want, you could always bring it to us. And I didn't know if I would ever publish another book. So I thought, while I have the chance, I might as well go meet these people. So I actually flew out to New York and took my artwork with me. But most of the time, I just pack it up in a box and ship it off and cross my fingers that it gets there.
So, where are your books available for purchase now?
Most local bookstores, we're in northern Michigan, so most local bookstores have them. Horizon Books, I think McLean and Aiken has some, and I think Between the Covers has some. And I know the ones in Suttons Bay and Leelanau County do, but they're also certainly available online from all the various book outlets, which I would recommend. What is it called? What's the one that supports independent bookstores?
No, I don't know, but I have to comment on that. I just have to. My books, Foxtails and Foxtails 2, are in Horizon Books and McLean and Aiken.
Excellent. Two really good bookstores.
Yeah. Our books are in the same stores.
That's very cool.
And we both live in northern Michigan.
That's true. It's a good place to be a writer or an artist, I think.
Is there a link you'd like to direct listeners to so that they can learn more about you and your books and purchase them?
Well, I don't sell my own books. I have a website. It's lynneraeperkins.com. It's my whole name. And you can learn about me and my books there. And you can purchase them at any online retailer.
And do you do things like local book signings, or do you support any businesses with your funds?
I mostly try to make a living, but I try to do nice things for people. And what was the first part of the question? I do signings. I do signings occasionally. I do some signings I usually do one at Horizon when I have a new book out, and I often do one at Bay Books in Suttons Bay. And I do various things, but I have to limit how many things I do because It takes a lot of time just to write and illustrate a book. And if I spend all my time doing other things, I run out of time to do that.
Yeah. What's next for you?
Well, I have a book coming out next February. It's called At Home in a Faraway Place. And it started because I've been trying to learn Spanish for a few years. And I went to Guatemala a couple of times and went to a Spanish school there. And so this is a story about a girl who goes with her dad and her grandma to a Central American country and to visit an old friend of her dad's. And while she's there, she makes a friend and she learns some Spanish words. So that's
cool.
my next book that's out.
Thank you so much for being here, Lynne Perkins. And thank you for sharing how you have created your wonderful books and how you shared them with the world. It is very inspiring and will help young authors on their path to writing, publishing, and promoting their book.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun.
And also a little shout out to Little House of Dreams Publishing for sponsoring today's episode.
All right.
I'm your host, Amelie Anastasia, and I hope today's episode with young authors inspired you to write a book and follow your dreams. Wishing you inspiration and a story to tell. See you next time on What's Up, Young Authors?
Let's go, young authors, hey, let's go out and save the day. Write your story your own way. What's up, young authors, hey? Let's go, young authors, hey, let's go out and save the day. Write your story your own way. What's up, young authors, hey, hey.